Welcome back to another episode of Launching Us. This is a podcast where we talk about our journey to become entrepreneurs, and on the way, we interview some amazing people. Today, we're interviewing Sean Smith, who's an amazing personal development coach, actor, honestly, just around a good person. But because he doesn't live here locally, Zoom is such an amazing tool. So we did the whole thing through Zoom. And so I hope you enjoy this episode with Sean Smith.
About the joke you said.
Oh,
What'd you say? Like, if it doesn't work out, we'll just go live with you.
yeah. Like, she didn't like that joke, but I said it anyway.
Yeah.
And then my mom was the same way. She was just like, I was working at the university, which is also the hospital here in town, and really good money, really good insurance. Benefits are great. And everyone on the island, at Galveston Island, is like, dude, if you can get a UTMB, like you're set. Like if you can get there, you're good. And finally, I got into the AV department. So like everything I do with Jonathan is basically what I did at the university. I checked all the projectors, did all the AV stuff, did video photography. You know, we were making good money. Like during that time, my wife and I were making really good money, enough to buy a home, enough to get, buy a new car, everything. And I just wasn't happy. Like,
Yeah.
it sucked the life out of me. And we just decided to go full into entrepreneur. My wife was like, well, no more buying cameras. Like if no more buying any camera equipment, like if you're doing this, I don't know why that thumbs up does it.
Yeah. And it doesn't work for me. I feel a little left out because
I
for
don't know.
whatever
Like, I
reason,
thought I
I
did
can't get
this and
those
the,
Zoom reactions.
yeah. But nonetheless, like, so like we were doing that. My mom was like, well, why quit? Like if you're doing everything
Yeah.
already, like, cause I was already traveling with Jonathan, like 2022 speaking right. I was still working. The one of the Ignite things that we did at the stage studio, I was still working a regular job. Some other stuff that we did, like with Jonathan and I, like I was still working and I would
Yeah.
still do weddings and stuff in the Galveston area, working at UTMB. But it was
Yeah.
like having all that was so draining. And we left. My mom was like, you're dumb. Like, why? Like you, all the insurance, everything you're losing.
Yeah.
Um, and we just learned, not that our family, and I love the way Lisa said it, or you said it this last week, is your family isn't the ones that are going to support you. Like we're the ones that's going to support you in this.
Mhm.
And that was like really evident to us, is like, okay, our family's going to love us and help us out regardless. But when it comes to our dreams and what we want to achieve, they're just not the right people to talk to about.
Right.
Um, and it turns out, like through interviewing other entrepreneurs, it's kind of the same thing, where it's like your mom and dad or aunts or uncles, whoever, or even friends. We have close friends that said the same thing.
Yeah.
They're like not supportive. But then we go to my wife and I and other people that are kind of entrepreneurs. They were like, dude, this is the best decision you're going to do. Like, this is
Right.
amazing. And those are the ones that we've gravitated to in the last year and a half. And everyone else, I mean, sadly, we kind of just stopped hanging out with them because they either wanted to talk about gossip stuff that, well, we don't really like gossip. And then we want to talk about business stuff and they're not really into that.
Yeah.
We kind of find like our inner circle kind of changed a lot in the last year. But like interviewing people like you, like I've always like, okay, what's your perspective on this? Uh, and I'll say this, we'll kick it off here. I don't really like doing a whole kickoff on this recording, but
Okay.
like you've said things like in like when I'm with you, especially when you're teaching, like, and my camera just goes down because I'm like, okay, I got to listen to this. Uh, and typically someone's recording it somewhere, so like I know I got it, but
Right.
there's been two things that you said in the last two times we've hung out, where you're teaching, and I'm just like, that is it. Like that's a switch in my brain. But before I go into that, like, introduce yourself, tell me a little bit more about you, because other than like Sean Smith, the actor coach, I don't really know much about you.
Yeah. That's interesting. We've been in a lot of places together, and it's easy. I mean, this happens a lot with live events. Like you're there to do a certain role, and you fit that role, and we don't really know who we are outside of those roles, right?
Yeah.
Um, so geez, man, I love everything that you were just talking about in terms of entrepreneurship. There's just so much to dive into. Um, I I'm just gonna probably bounce all around because I geek out
I'm
about
the
all this
same way.
stuff.
Yeah, I'm
So
the same way. We're good.
yeah, so this is not gonna be like a three
Nope.
part outlined essay style
Nope.
discussion. I'm gonna actually just kind of go backwards because over the last few years, I've been really committed to teaching entrepreneurship, which is different than teaching business.
Yeah.
And what I think is happening in the personal development world of business, or the business element of the personal development world, is that people are teaching business strategies and business skills and business tools and even business thinking. But if you teach a business philosophy to an employee, they will ruin it every time
Mm,
because the employee mind will sabotage the entrepreneurial journey.
yeah.
And so I think there's a big distinction that needs to be made between employee and entrepreneur. And that doesn't necessarily just mean whether somebody has a job or not. Somebody can be an entrepreneur and have a job,
100%.
or somebody can not have a job and jumped out into the business world but still be an employee in their
Hmm.
mind, in their thinking.
Yeah.
And so to me, that's the critical distinction. A couple of years ago, I actually taught a program called eSchool, and the E stands for entrepreneur. It was entrepreneur school for coaches, primarily just for coaches in the personal development world. But the processes and the foundations apply to every type of entrepreneurship. But what I found is that the reason nearly all coaches are struggling is because of their employee mindset. And the employee mindset values certainty, and it values safety, and it values avoiding risks, and it values guarantees, and it values knowing what's not only in front of them, but around the corners in front of them, right? And that's just the nature of the employee mind, that is more driven by avoiding risk than seeking freedom.
Yeah.
And it's essentially what you're talking about with, the reactions that we get with friends and family. And I would say almost all the time, very similar to what you just shared, almost all the time, the people that want to become entrepreneurs and end up in this world of personal development entrepreneurship are people that didn't grow up with it. They didn't grow up with a family that owned a restaurant, or a family who, just were entrepreneurial by nature. Because if they were, then they wouldn't go into the personal development world to learn how to become an entrepreneur, because it's already in their bones, right?
Yeah.
Like if you grew up in a family of bowlers and and you just grew up bowling, you're not going to need somebody to teach you how to bowl, right?
I
So
always like to say too, like people that grew up in that world of like having parents that are entrepreneurs, highly successful, they have the privilege to see their mom and dad from two angles. One, highly
yes.
successful, but also you're still my mom and dad. So it's kind of like we have this perspective of, oh, mom's such an idiot. Oh, dad's such an idiot. Like, and so like I always thought like, okay, if he can do it, then I can definitely do it because they see dad behind closed doors.
Man, I think that's such an important point. I've never thought of that.
Yeah.
Because if you don't see, and the reason that's such an important point is because what most people are missing is the reality behind entrepreneurship. And so if they don't have that reality from proximity to family members and especially parents like that, then they're getting an outside look. They're first getting a window shopping look of entrepreneurship. And most entrepreneurs that are behind the window are going to give you the shiny version of it.
100%.
They're going to tell you about the nice stuff and how amazing all the things are. But they don't, show you what's outside the frame, right? They don't
Yeah.
show you the nonsense and the mess, or the fact that like this is just this is just a backdrop, bro. Like that's all this is, right? This is not a wooden wall.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't want to show you the nail holes behind it. That's why I got a wall. So
Exactly.
this facade of entrepreneurship does a lot of damage to people, because what they then think is the norm is just what is presented to them. And what I love about what you just said is that people that grew up in the family version of entrepreneurship, they saw the reality behind what's just presented. And so
100%.
they don't go into this with these false expectations. they don't go into it believing that it's just all going to be nice and easy, and
Yeah.
you know,
They
and
they
you could
they,
just
they lived the highs and lows of it. Like
that
they
right there.
lived it. So they were able to see mom and dad not pay the mortgage or not pay the bills and gone weeks without power or days without power. And then at the same time, experience these extraordinary vacations because mom and dad just hit it big. Uh,
Yeah,
so like they're able to see both. And I think because of the reality of seeing your dad and knowing your dad, hearing dumb dad jokes, dumb things going on in the house, just everything that I'll say dads, because I can't speak for mom because I'm not a mom, but as a dad, like all those things that we are by nature, they see it. So the
yeah,
kid is growing up going, my dad's so dumb, but
yeah,
he's so smart when it comes to XYZ. And then
yeah.
their mind, they're thinking, if my dad can do that, I can surely do this. Like,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah, because they see there's your little thumbs up
I know, I see
reaction
that.
too. So Zoom agrees with you.
Zoom totally.
And the other piece to that, I mean, I don't think we can overstate this enough. I think this is such a critical component,
Yeah.
is that now they see the reality. They see the good and the bad. They see the struggle and the vacations, like you said. And then they get to choose into it knowing the good and the bad. What
Ooh,
nearly everybody is doing is just chasing the good, and then when the bad hits them in the face, they're surprised by it. Like,
yeah.
what? Nobody ever told me this was going to happen. Yeah, because they're lying to you. That's why.
Yeah.
And
John
you probably
Maxwell
bought a
doesn't
bunch of
have
their
this.
programs before you found out that that's a backdrop.
Yeah.
And and that's why I say it does a lot of damage to people. And so, but it's also really difficult, man. It's really difficult to teach entrepreneurship to employees because we as a society are programmed to be employees
One.
by the owners of society, right? There's a reason that they're training and conditioning nearly everybody on the planet to be employees so that we feed into their machine of ownership. And that's like it's like trying to explain to a fish that it's in water. It's like, what do you mean I'm in water? Like, this is just how it is. Yeah,
Yeah.
because we put you in water.
Yeah.
And so it's really difficult because it's truly like disorienting to to understand. Like, the analogy that I always give is like, you live on Earth, and for your whole life you've learned how to operate on Earth, and you don't take every step hoping that your foot's going to land on the ground because you've lived with gravity your whole life.
Yeah.
So you don't have to worry about that. You don't walk around going, man, I hope there's oxygen in this invisible air so that when I suck in right now, I'm going to actually get the nutrients that my body needs in my lungs. And
Yeah.
then I hope that I'm going to breathe out, carbon dioxide. Like, we don't worry about those things because it's just the way they are.
Yeah.
But then we say we want to be entrepreneurs. And then essentially what we're saying is, okay, send me to the moon. And then people get to the moon and they're like, well, I can't breathe. Yeah, because there's no oxygen up here. No, but every time I try to step, I just float away. Yeah, because there's no gravity up here. Like, it's literally, the differences are literally like trying to live on the moon after being conditioned to live on Earth.
100%.
And it is so wildly disorienting to people, which goes back to what I think the two main things are, you already alluded to. The two main things that people need is a drive and support. So
100.
you need something that you can tap back into. We just sent an email to our community yesterday with this exact same concept. You need something you can tap back into as to the reason you chose this. Why did you say yes to this thing that's going to get hard and it's going to be challenging, and you're going to question why you're doing this? You're going to question if you have what it takes. You're like, that's just a part of this process. And if you don't have an answer to why you did this, then the road is just going to be too difficult for nearly everybody.
Yeah.
And people are just trying to find intellectual solutions to emotional problems. And the battles are emotional, right?
Yeah.
There's risk. Like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to pay the bills, and I don't know if I might have to grab a second job and all that. So there's like tangible risks and things you have to do, but the danger is emotional of that, right? Because what if you can't pay the bills? It's not just, can I live without light? Of course, humans can live without light. It's, what do you see when you look in the mirror after your lights are turned off? what do you see when you look in the mirror to, like you said, as a dad, if
Yeah.
you can't provide for your family? Now, I've been in a bunch of dark dad places, and I'm happy to share those with you. But you have to have, going back to what you said, you shared, you have to have a reason where you decided. And I remember my reason when I decided. So I was a probation officer coming out of college. I wanted to be a lawyer until my guidance counselor told me that the majority of being a lawyer is going to be writing paperwork. And I was like, absolutely not. I just want to get paid to argue because I've been arguing my whole life. I'm really good at it. And but once I found out it was going to be mostly paperwork, I'm like, how can I pivot? But I already was like almost all the way done with a criminal justice degree. So I went into probation, and I love the idea of probation. I love the idea
But
of
now you can
helping
be one on
kids.
TV. You could be a lawyer on TV now.
Exactly.
Hey,
Right.
your
And
dreams
and,
are
and
still
I have.
fulfilled.
So I can fulfill some of those
Yeah.
dreams, on set. Um, and I love the idea of probation and it was a juvenile probation officer. So I love the idea of helping kids.
Yeah.
But the reality of helping kids wasn't available like that. Like, it wasn't really an opportunity for me to help kids. And I was in a situation where all I was doing was writing sentencing reports to the judge, basically. So a kid would get adjudicated, and then I would tell the judge what I suggest the punishment be.
Mhm.
And I'm, looking back, it made sense. I'm this bleeding heart. Like, this kid has a chance. If you want to lock anybody up, lock up the parents, because these are the problems. But this kid has a chance if we just give him some love and some nurturing. We got to get him out of the streets. Like,
Yeah.
and the judge is like, okay, juvenile hall is what I read from this. I'm like, no, it's not what I'm saying. Like, we give this kid some help. I was really a social worker dressed up as a probation officer.
Yeah.
But I got really frustrated because I saw that it was a revolving door. And the one story that I'll never forget, and this is 25 years ago. The
Mhm.
one story that I'll never forget is I was doing research on a kid so that I could give my suggestion. And part of that research is always talking to the parents if you can get a hold of them. And I talked to the parents, and the mom didn't know that the kid hadn't been in school for 3 years,
Mhm.
and the kid was like in eighth grade, right? Like, and so it was just so sobering for me to realize the disconnect, but also the influence of school, and not just education, because the educational system has all kinds of things wrong with it, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But it's like the social aspect of it, and just kids feeling good about themselves, just learning something, right? So I don't believe that everybody needs to learn, get A's in the industrial version of education. But I saw what happens when kids just wanted to belong, and they found other ways. And so anyway, I ended up wanting to be, I decided to be a teacher, a school teacher. I wanted to get on the other side and like try to get to the kids beforehand. And I loved that, man. There was no sobering up, disappointment or anything. I loved it. I was a middle school math teacher for 5 years, and it was perfect because I've never matured past seventh grade. So I was on the same level as my seventh graders. I was telling the fart jokes and
Yeah. You
making
got all
them
the
laugh, right?
jokes. Yeah.
Exactly. And then after about 5 years, my wife got pregnant with our first child, and my daughter was born over 22 years ago. And in the mornings, when she was just a few months old, she would be clinging to me, and I would have to peel her off of me to give her back to my wife, to then go outside and start crying in my car as I went back to I went to school, to my job. And I remember I just had a moment that just basically said, if there's a way that I can pay these bills and stay home with that thing that I just peeled off my chest, that little creature that we made, I'm open.
Yeah.
And it was like, when you ask for what you're looking for, or you get really clear on something, it shows up. And so that was my first introduction to the world of entrepreneurship, really. And I just started studying different things, and was going to different meetings, got into network marketing, and got into some sales positions. But essentially, I was just trying to stay home with my daughter.
Yeah.
And I quit teaching a year later. Now, I didn't have a solid plan, and so I would never, ever pretend to tell anybody they should do what I did. But the pain of peeling her off my chest was so great that I jumped off the cliff without a parachute or a backpack.
Mm,
But I was like, I mean, whatever I got to do.
yeah.
And it was a painful several years, lit our life savings on fire. Um, and but I learned so much, and that's when I got into the world of personal development. And after about 3 years or 4 years, then I found my thing. I found my thing of speaking and coaching, and so that was back in 2006, I think. And and ever since I've been doing this full time. But
Wow.
going back to your point, like there's a moment, and as I was just telling the story, I felt the tears welling up. Like there's a moment, and my daughter's 22. I just spent the weekend with her. She's about to graduate college, so this is like how long I've been an entrepreneur. I can tell how long I have just by looking at her and how old
That
she is.
that's honestly that's the thought process I have. Like I didn't grow up with a dad. My dad kind of left. My then we had a stepdad and he died like right after high school, right when I was starting to make the connection with him. He
Mm,
passed away with cancer. So like I've gone through two dads basically, and my whole life is like I just wanted to be a good dad. That's all. Not even a good,
yeah.
I just want to be a good dad. And so I relate to your story. Like I remember watching my kids because we had them back to back, so they're like 10 months apart. Uh,
Wow.
my wife went back to work, working night shifts, and I had both. So like I would leave work, come straight home. She would go to work, and I would watch both my kids for I don't know. It feels like forever in my head. It could have
Mm-hmm.
been weeks, but it most likely it was like months. And I remember watching my kids every night, putting them to bed. The headaches of like, be quiet, don't go to sleep. Like I remember my
Mm,
daughter like sleeping on my chest, my son sleeping on my chest, waking up in the middle of the night. Like I remember all those moments, and I just like had that thought: this is what you wanted. Like this is what you
yeah.
wanted for so long. And then when we finally like got old enough, and I started like taking my kids to school, and I'm just like, this is dumb. Like I don't like this. Like I want them with me. Like I don't have the time to be with them. And it's just that thought process. This is what you always wanted, is to be a dad, a good dad. And so like I 100% relate that story, because that to me that was the trigger for us, was like, how can we be the best parents that we possibly can, show our kids more than life than just the typical 9 to 5, do this, do that, like everything the world teaches you to do.
Yeah.
What can we do differently? And that was our trigger, was the exact same thing, because I just wanted to be a good dad. That's it. And I don't know, I cut you off, but like that was my
No,
thing.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, that was like our I mean, I relate so much to that story, so much. Yeah.
And one of the reasons why that's so powerful, one, is the drive for entrepreneurship has to be intrinsic.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be something about you wanting to do a thing for the sake of doing the thing, for the sake of what it means to you. And the distinction between intrinsic and extrinsic, I think, is important for people to understand. Extrinsic motivation is I'm going to do a thing and then I'm going to get a thing. So the whole world of employeeship is extrinsic. I'm going to give you my time and you're going to give me money. And
100.
then with that money, I'm going to be able to do something. Or you go to school, I'm going to give you my time. You're going to give me a degree. With that degree, I'm going to give that degree to somebody and they're going to give me a job. And then I'm going to give them their time. And they're going to give me money. It's all transactional in nature. And so I give you something and then I get something in return. That's extrinsic motivation, where everything is coming from external rewards. And the entrepreneurial journey is so internal that if you don't have intrinsic motivation, the internal battle will be lost because the external rewards don't have the power. So if instead of you being driven by, I want to be a good dad, if you had this dream, I want to be a millionaire, and not that that's a bad dream, but if that's the only dream, that you wanted that extrinsic reward for all the things that millionaire status usually means to most people, which is, vanity generally for most people. Like, I want to be celebrated. I want to be approved of. I want to be respected, all those things, which goes back to how I feel, right?
Yeah.
The drive to be a millionaire, which is for most people a relatively shallow reward, that's not going to get you up when times get hard. That's not going to keep you going, but your drive to be a dad
Yeah.
will.
Yeah.
And I think what most people miss is those moments that you just said. This is why I chose this. Like, with open eyes, I chose this knowing that it would be hard, but the reason I want it is bigger than the obstacles to get it.
Yeah, there's a conversation we did with our kids. I was setting up for some recording thing in the living room, because this is also our studio. So like we move all the couches and this become a big studio space for people.
Yeah.
And I was setting up a camera and I was just like, John, Sophia, come here. And those are my kids' names. And I sat them down. I was just like, what do you guys think about mom and dad starting our own business? Oh, my thing's about to stop. I got about 10 minutes, but we'll be
Perfect.
um, and they just started telling me like, well, we kind of miss you sometimes when you leave for work. And then I just thought this is a really good opportunity to really hear my kids out while recording it. So I started listening to them, and my daughter said, well, I know we can do it. Like we're the Lazos. We can do anything. Like even when we
Nice.
fail, we can learn. And I was like, that is definitely because she's seen us fail. She's
Yeah.
seen things happen in the house. She's 9 years old, but she's smart. She sees things happen. And then she sees us make it work. And that was like my heart wanted to just cry because I was just like,
Yeah.
this is it. You're getting it. You're getting that. Like, we don't have to just do the mundane thing every day. We can make our own lives up. We can do this on our own. Um, and then we start asking her questions like, what do you want to be when you grow up? She's like, oh, I want to be a teacher. I want to be a chef. Like, it seems more open minded than just
Yeah.
typical, I want to be a doctor. I want to be a cop. Like, it seems more like there's so much more there's texture to the conversation. And
Yeah.
my son's the same way. Like, he definitely wants to go into the doctor's world at this time, which is fine. Like if that's what he wants, like I'm totally fine with that. Do your thing. And then I hear him say, but I can also do this. And I'm like, exactly. You can do anything. There's so much more you can do, because you don't have to just follow the system.
Yeah.
Like, and I think that's to me where it's like, it's so true to see my kids go through the process with me. And at the same time, experience the down and lows with me. And I think that's where that whole thought process come from was like, I'm pretty sure if I was successful and like everything was really going well, like you would think completely different. But my kids have definitely been there where we
Yeah.
lost power for 2 days and we just couldn't pay the bills because we were low. And we made it work. I had all these lights on batteries and we made it work, made it fun. We played Uno constantly, but like they've seen the highs and lows. And at the end of the day, I love my daughter says, we can do anything though. We can make it. We're the Lazos.
That's
And
everything.
to me, that means so much more than having $1 million in my bank account or whatever. Um, yeah. So like, I do want to talk about the two things that I heard you say that, oh my God, just it like shattered my mindset.
Yeah.
Especially in this last week, you said when we made it, when you say, hey, I got to be charged what I'm worth, that made it personal. And like that, it was one of those moments that like I literally put my camera down. I was like, wait, I gotta listen to this because this is such a good thought process. Because we're taught through social media, through all these guys that are guru for video guys, is be paid what you're worth. And even I was using that same verbiage when I would hire people. Like, no, tell me what you think. I want to make sure you're paid what you're worth. Um, which is, I get the concept is a really good concept. I get it now. I didn't get
Yeah.
it last week. And I was like, I get it. That's a really good concept. Get paid what you're worth. I get it. But the reality of that is that you just made that personal. If business is supposed to be non-personal,
Yeah.
that just made it personal. Tell me more about that.
Yeah,
Honestly,
for sure.
my brain was like shattered after that.
Now, the disclaimer here is I don't want anybody to change anything that's working for them.
The
But
dislike.
nearly everybody I see caught up in this charge what you're worth, it's not working for them
Yeah.
because and there's nothing wrong with that phrase if we dissect it and understand what we're saying with what you are worth. So if you are doing AV and I'm putting on an event,
Yeah.
I'm only going to pay a certain amount for what your service is worth to me. And at a certain point, if you're charging, Vancouver, I remember it's 2007, Vancouver charged me $3,000 for a sound system just to rent for 3 days. And it wasn't worth it to me. And because of that, I ended up buying a different equipment. That's kind of a silly application of this. But if you told me, here's what Juan Lazo's worth, I am worth $250 million. I'm like, cool, bro. I have $250 for you if you want to put lights around the room, right? That's all I got because the service that you're providing is different than the person that you are.
Yeah.
And so the messiness is when we try to charge what we are worth and it becomes personal. Now we're talking about self-esteem, and that is wildly unhealthy for a couple of reasons. Number one, how do you put a price tag on your self-esteem? How do you say I am worth $200 an hour, $2,000 an hour? How's that price tag go? And for most people, I'm not good enough is the most common conversation. It's the loudest thing in their head. So how do you go into, I call it the self-abuse room. How do you go into the self-abuse room where everything echoing off all the walls is you're not good enough and this doesn't work and let me remind you of all your mistakes, and then go into that room and put a price tag on yourself?
100%. There's been several conversations. I'm sorry to cut you off. It's just
No,
like,
go ahead.
there's several conversations where it's like, this makes total sense. And I've had conversations with people like, oh, I love your work. I love your videos. I want to hire you. And I send them a quote and they go, ooh, that's too much. And
Yeah.
I go, well, that's my value. Like in my head, I'm thinking that's the value that I have. And then I always feel like I'm cheating myself when I'm like, well, I'll give you a discount. I'll give you this. And at the end of the day, like it's the emotional damage that I add to myself because I made it personal.
That
I would have just said, hey, this is my value. Thank you, Zoom. If I would have just said, here's my value or here's my cost, not my value, here's my cost, like I think it would have been completely different. But the idea of like, this is my value.
yeah.
And that's the
It's
energy
the ownership
behind
of
it.
it.
Yeah, the ownership behind
Right.
that. I don't
Because
know.
then when they say no to your service, it sounds like they're rejecting you as a person.
Yeah, 100%. And I know
That's the problem.
this last weekend, like I was on a super high. My energy was good. We just got back from New Mexico. Like everything was really great. And then like I get like one bad phone call, and I hear another text message of another client, and I hear another person saying the same thing. It was like, oh man, that's good, but your price is too high. And I'm just like, I remember just being on a treadmill jogging, and then just like message after message, and my energy just dropped.
Yeah.
Like this is stupid. Like why? Like and instead of like getting more upset with myself because I remember what you said, I was like, my phone is too much. So I had to turn my phone off because like the phone should not have this much power over me.
Right. That right there.
But that whole thing like changed my perspective because like I have been making it personal. If business is not supposed to be personal, I just made it personal by saying this is my value.
Yeah, and there's a part of business that can be personal in what we were talking about the first part of this conversation. Make it personal that you want to be a good dad.
100%.
Make it personal for me that I want to be home with my daughter. So being personal can be a very powerful fuel, but it's a horrible strategy. And the flip side of that is maybe more damaging, where if you do send somebody a price quote and they go, yeah, I'll totally pay you that amount, and you think they're accepting you as a person. No, they're not. They're paying for your service. That's what they're doing. And so there's a very cold aspect to business that is simply about a trade of value. That's it. If I need somebody to clean the floors of my studio, I have a value on that. And if I'm only willing to pay $50 to clean these floors, then it doesn't matter what somebody has done in their life or how good of a person they are or anything. I'm not going to pay more than my perceived value of the service.
Yeah.
And if we inject our self-esteem into this calculation, it will go wrong both ways, right? We're going to be more destroyed with rejections or more elated with acceptances. And both of those are bad.
Yeah.
And so it causes us to not make wise, intellectual, strategic decisions when our self-esteem is in the process. And so what this is really about is just detaching our self-esteem from the service that we provide. And then here's the cool thing. What I found is then you'll get paid more because your energy won't be desperate when you send people proposals, and you'll be able to know this service is what I'm willing to do it for. And if you don't find that much value, that's fine. Then I'm going to go somewhere else and get that value. Right. So it's a giant conversation.
Yeah, dude, honestly, that right there is gold because it is the emotional weight that you have on you. And this is just the struggle I've been dealing with is I have the struggle that I want to be a good dad, and I have all that stuff that's like that emotional part of it, which is I think is a really strong thing to have. Because when times are rough, I'm like, I look at my kids or I look at the future that I want for our kids and my wife. I'm like, no, I have to keep going.
Yeah.
Because in the last 2.5 years, almost close 3 years, being trying to become a more entrepreneur independent, like there's definitely low points. And there's definitely been times where like I'm like, dude, I can just go back to work a normal job. Like I'm okay with
Yeah.
that. And then
Yeah.
I start thinking about my kids and I start thinking about all this stuff and like, but I can't. Like that
Yeah.
is so much more important to me. And then I get all this emotional damage from like sending out invoices and go, oh no, that's too much. And I'm just like, no, but you don't understand my value. And that's what I always say. You don't understand my value. I'm so more valuable than just a videographer. Which it's good to know. Like I'm not just a videographer. There's more to me. That's great.
Yeah.
When it comes to a service, for most people, I am just a videographer. And this is where it's like I feel
Which like, is such a like that's such a geez, and like as you say that you're just a videographer, that seems so demeaning, but it's actually empowering at the same time. And there's so many things in entrepreneurship that are infuriating or liberating, just depends on how you look at it.
yeah,
Because to me, as the person, especially if I don't know you, as the person that wants to hire you to film my wedding or to film whatever event, bro, you're just a videographer.
yeah,
Like that doesn't mean I'm going to crap on you as a person. Like I'm going to respect you as a person. But if we're talking about this money that I have and the service that you have, and we're going to exchange, you are a videographer and I am just a money provider for your service of videography. Now we could chill, you know, once our business entities exchange value, you and I can hang out as people, you
yeah,
know, and share a drink or something like, hey, but when our humanity, like not humanity just in like just being a good person, but when our self-esteem gets in the mix, then it gets really messy. I'm just a videographer. Right.
and the emotional parts to that, the weight of it is just it's so much, and it's unnecessary. Like it's
Yeah.
extremely unnecessary. Like there's been people that have hired me for jobs, and I go like, okay, I'm just gonna do my job. This is all it is. But by nature, I am who I am, and they end up loving me. They're like, oh man, you're the best. You're so great, and that's awesome.
Yeah.
Do I ever get anything from again? No. Like there's not more transactions that happen later. But it's really fun for the moment. And that's where it's like I just really enjoy what I'm doing.
That.
Um, but yeah, at the end of the day, I'm just their videographer. Um, and it is very freeing to know that. And I think it was Charcy who told me, she's like, that's why you need to put less energy on some of those clients. Don't give them your full package. Don't go full on out. Like, and I think that's where like the last video I just posted on social media, like I guess it rained really well with
Yeah.
people.
With you like out in the, did you shoot it
Yeah,
in New Mexico?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't want to miss the opportunity, so I kept recording stuff, and then
Right.
finally the idea hit my head, and I'm like, I need to record this. And then the last video I just posted, it was me kind of thanking Jonathan, but at the same time, like me realizing more that there's a big pool of clients out there. Like there are clients out there that are going to really 100% value who I am, value the work I do, and at the same time, don't mind paying me what it is. And there's not a emotional attachment to the money.
That's the
Which,
key. And,
and
and,
most
and
people, and most people have that emotional attachment, like, oh, I'm paying you X amount of money. Ugh.
yeah,
And
because most people have an emotional attachment to money,
yeah.
because we think that having money makes us a better person, or it makes us more worthy of celebration or approval or whatever it is. So there's this really deep-seated emotional attachment to money, which is one of the reasons that being an employee is so trapping in like a desirable way for employees,
Yeah.
because we're willing to give our time away because the reward of money is so great.
Mhm.
And then if it comes with status increases and bonuses and promotions and all that kind of stuff, we're willing to make that trade,
Yeah.
even though most people don't really they're not lit up by the job that they do, you know, based on all kinds of studies, but they're willing to make the trade because of our emotional attachment to money.
Yeah.
And then at some point in time, a lot of people just realize it's a fake value.
100%.
It's like what I really want is to be a good dad, or what I really want is to be a leader or something like that. And so this and what I would say, to go back to what you mentioned about like not putting as much into it. Oh, I have two things to say. Number one, I think you can just be who you are. You know, I know you enough now as a man that like I know who you are. And yeah, and I do enjoy the personality. I like the the interactions and all that stuff, because then that makes the overall experience
Great.
more fun.
Yeah.
And I'm not the one in our interactions that's cutting the check to you or cutting the check to John, but
Yeah.
I am in, kind of the co-facilitator role. So we're like in those exchanges, even though the money's not necessarily coming out of my bank account, but I appreciate all the things you bring. And if the money was coming out of my bank account, I have hired John in cases in the past,
Mhm.
and I do appreciate that.
Yeah.
But there's only so much that's worth, right? Like I'm not going to pay 10 times just because I like you guys,
Yeah. Of
right?
course. Of course.
But here's the flip side to that. This is the other thing. Your service, and we just keep using, videographer here because that's,
Yeah. Because that's my
largely
role,
what you
but it,
do.
it goes to anything. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
goes for anything. That service is a transaction, as we've been talking about. It's a trade. And you might send a proposal out to somebody and say, my videography for this one day is $1,000. And they might scoff, they might never respond, they might flat out go, dude, are you crazy? I'm not gonna pay $1,000 for a day. Like, divide that by 10, it's $100 an hour, and I don't even make $100 an hour. Like, they could justify it, and they could like
Yeah.
all out like assault you. And you could take your exact same services and offer it to somebody else who's swimming in money and go, for me to come in for a single day to film your thing is $15,000. And they'd go, you want a check? You want cash? Like,
Yeah.
right away. They would go, yeah, fine. No big deal. And and that's because the value of your service is determined by the person purchasing it.
100%.
So to somebody, that service is worth $15,000.
Yeah.
To somebody else, it's not.
And
And
I,
that's the other piece. That's why it's liberating
yeah, I get
or
it.
infuriating, depending on how you see it.
Yeah. I mean, I understand it so much. And especially the way you said it, like it triggered my wife when we were doing really well financially. Even now, she still wants it. Is a weekly maid coming over, or house cleaning lady. I don't
Yeah,
know.
like housekeeper.
Housekeeper, we'll say that one. And I don't see the value in it. I'm like, whatever. I can do it myself. To give someone
Right.
$100 an hour to come clean my house, I can do it myself. And that, I get it. That makes sense to me, because that's probably the same thing someone else is thinking when it comes to video. I can just grab my phone. I can do it myself. I don't need you. Like,
Right.
you 100% can do that. But the service that we add, and the same thing with the housekeeper, like her coming over or him coming over to clean my house while I'm doing something else, is 100% stress relieving.
Yeah.
And the times that we've had someone come clean the house, dude, we come home, and especially she'll clean on a Friday. The whole weekend, I'm just like, relax. The house
Yeah.
is clean. Dishes are good. My kids' clothes are folded and put it away. Like, I'm like,
That's what the $150 is
yeah. And
for.
I'm like, oh my God, that makes so much sense. And
Yeah.
then the reality goes in, man, I'm undercharging her. Like this, the amount, because the emotional weight's off. And I'm like,
Yeah.
man, I would easily pay her 250, like whatever. Like, I don't want her to hear that, but like I would pay her more, because the freedom that I get afterwards is amazing. And I think that's the reality of like, when
Yeah.
I
That's it.
separate the money part of being valuable, like that's not value. Like the value I add on who I am as a person, the interaction I have with my client, the respect I have to my client, that's my value.
That's
The
the thing.
money, and the money is not, and that's where it's like I'm getting to that point where it's like that makes more sense to me,
Mhm.
than charge what you're worth. Like,
Yeah. Another extension of that is when you're charging what you're worth. And one thing that I said last week when you were in the room, I think, is you can't be healing your emotional wounds with other people's wallets.
yeah,
Because that's essentially what we're trying to do, right? In order to make me feel better as a person, I want to charge you more. And because it makes sense. If you pay more for me, then I'm more valuable. That's one of the reasons why in the coaching world there's this huge push and focus on high ticket offers.
Mm.
Because people think if I can get somebody to pay me $10,000, then that means I'm $10,000 worth of value.
Yeah.
And there's so much more to dive into that. We don't have time
Yeah.
to go there now.
100%. But like
But
the idea of being emotionally healed or emotionally stable, because
yeah,
to me that's the right word, to be like, you pay me $100, you pay me $50, I'm still the same person. I'm
I'm
still
good.
valuable. Like, and that's where it's like,
That's the piece.
yeah, and I think that's the piece right there as an entrepreneur. Like, that's to me, that's what keeps me going. Is now knowing like, yeah, if someone says no to $1,500 proposal, that's cool. Like,
And
I'm
here's why that's such a big piece. Yeah, here's why that's such a big deal for most people. Not just the present moment or the past moments of being rejected or being accepted and our emotional attachments to those things. It's not about the present or the past. It's really about the future when it comes to entrepreneurship. Because if your self esteem is in the mix, if I'm putting myself on the table for you to accept or reject in my offer, then every time I do that, it will be scary because
mm,
if you reject me, that emotional devastation is something I don't want to feel. Therefore, I'm going to do everything I can to try to manipulate my offer or wait until I'm good enough or wait until I'm perfect or go after the other people, like try to find people that I think will definitely say yes to me. In other words, I'm going to manipulate my efforts in order to get my emotional satisfaction. And from that perspective, we're not making clean offers, nor are we going to make enough offers generally. So when your self-esteem is not at risk, then you will have the emotional excitement, and you won't have the desperation, and you'll have the willingness and permission to make offer after offer after offer after offer, because every time somebody tells you no, they don't take a piece of you with them. But if every time somebody tells you no, they take a piece of you with them, well, there's only so much of you to give out. And so you're going to hoard yourself.
yeah,
I said hoard, by the way, HOARD, but I kind of actually sort of meant it the other way.
it works both ways for sure.
It totally works both ways, because I'm going to give you whatever version you're going to pay for.
Yeah, and
And
oh man,
that's kind of whoring yourself to whoever's going to buy you.
yeah,
But at the end of the day, that leads to shame. It leads to disappointment. It definitely doesn't lead to you looking in the mirror and going, I'm a good dad.
yeah, yeah, and oh, man, like your big why is so much more valuable than the big paychecks. Like,
Yeah.
that's my wife tells me all the time. Like, who'd you reach out this week? Especially when like projects are doing low, she's like, who'd you call today? Who'd you reach out to? And in my head, I'm like, because they're gonna say no to my proposal. They don't want to pay me my worth, and that is like the wrong mentality. That
Right.
you're right. I go into these meetings or I go into these things with like that sales mentality because I'm desperate. Um, Versus like, yeah, if you say no to this, that's fine. There's
Yeah.
other people out there who would definitely pay what I'm worth.
Yeah.
I can't. I'm still learning how to change that. Like, but just learn to pay what the value is or the just what the cost is.
I know it's kind of hard to even relanguage it, right? Because you're so programmed in what you're worth. But here's the other thing. And I know we got to wrap this up, but I want to have a bunch of these conversations with you if you're up for it.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'm down.
the other thing to it is, well, one of my favorite quotes and concepts, that desperation destroys discernment. So when you're desperate, you're coming from this place of neediness, and it doesn't allow you to be strategic with your choices. And the other thing about this, I just lost my train of thought. Oh, this is so good too. So, I know what it is. If we were to take a look at our actions as an entrepreneur, this is one of the most sobering, slap you in the face concepts that I remember learning years and years ago. But it's the truth, and we have to understand this. If we take a look at what we do on a daily basis, and like if we were to track our action, this action, this action, this action, this action. I actually have some tracking sheets to help people track. Okay, what are you doing? You spent 10 hours in your business. What did you actually do with those 10 hours? For most entrepreneurs, especially people that were programmed as employees and became entrepreneurs, the high majority of actions don't even have the possibility of bringing in money. They don't even have the possibility of growing a business, which is essentially the question that your wife asked. So what I find, and it happened with me the very first time I tracked, and with most entrepreneurs, 90 to 95% of our actions are nothing more than moving papers around. They're maintenance activities. They're not growth activities.
Yeah.
And so we take it, you know, I was a baseball player. It's like, if you don't swing the bat, you can't get a hit.
100%.
But my little boy inside is like, no, but if I don't swing the bat, then I won't strike out. Okay, yeah. And you'll never get a hit. Right?
The reality is
Like,
that you can still strike out. Like that's the crazy thing. Oh,
right. That's the thing. And so I don't strike out. So I don't swing the bat then so that I swing and miss, but then I strike out looking and I still lose. Right? Never having an opportunity to actually get a hit. So most entrepreneurs don't swing the bat in ways that could actually grow their business, primarily because of the emotional attachment that we've been talking about. Yeah. Dude, there's like 100 other things that I want to talk about.
There, yeah, for sure. Like now, that whole reality, I wanted to like go deep into that. There's the other thing you said when we were in Daytona that like I still like that still ponders my brain like every day, and I use this even when I'm like trying to tell people about like video work. Is I use that triangle thing you talked about. People that know you, who like you, people who love you and hate you, and people who don't know you exist. And I use that all the time now. And they're
good.
Like, oh my God, that's so good. And I'm like, yeah. And I didn't know like where you got it from, or if that's just you. And so I was telling somebody, I want to say a few months ago, and they're like, I'm just going to quote you. And you said that. I was like,
right.
Sure. I don't know how that works legally, but sure, do that.
Whatever. Yeah. That's who they heard it from. You heard it from me. I actually got it from a client, but yeah, it's powerful. Right.
It is 100% because like I use that all the time to one for video. It obviously sells my need of like, this is why you need video, is because there's a worldwide of people out there who don't know you exist. Yeah. And all you're doing is fishing for the people that like you, and then the ones that don't like you, then you're never really going to grow. Yeah. So having a good video guy, having someone who can make you content is huge, because there's especially for Galveston County, and we'll wrap this up soon. Especially for Galveston County, like there's huge tourists. So a lot of these clients, a lot of people in this area don't want to really do marketing, because what's the point? Every summer, a wave of people are going to come in. You'll get several people during spring break or during Memorial Weekend, all these big weekends. You'll get somebody coming in who wants ice cream, so they go to the local ice cream shop, who wants coffee, so they go to the local coffee shop. They'll want a cheeseburger from a local place because they'll, that's where locals go. Yeah. And they'll do that. By nature, they're going to go. Yeah. But the way I think of it is like, if you can set these up beforehand, then they're actually seeking you out when they're on the island or when they're on vacation or wherever, because they saw a different game on social media. Yeah. Now they want to know, do I like this burger or do I not like this burger? And I love the way you said it, is that your job is not to make them like you or hate you. It's just to know that you exist.
Push them in one of those two buckets.
Yeah, 100%. But Sean, thank you so much. Everything. I would love to do this again. This is fun.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, cool.
For sure. We got plenty of conversations.